Let me play you the piece first, and then we'll have a little lesson covering the technical and musical ideas in the piece. And if you want to pick up the free sheet music, go to thisisclassicalguitar.com, or there's a link in the YouTube info section if you're watching there. And there's also a tablature version there as well. Okay, so let's have a little lesson on the piece and just talking about just a couple of things in the piece. So the piece, it sits around the intermediate level. If you're an early intermediate player or like just transitioning into the intermediate playing, the part that's going to give you trouble is the thirds in bar 19, that, and again in bar 25 as well, and just before that 24 as well. Now if you're like a beginner transitioning into intermediate and you really want to play the piece, just take out the bottom note of the thirds, so you'll just get, and then the later part. It'll sound just fine, of course, just not quite as thick, and you just won't get that color of the thirds in there, but that's okay. So if you're an intermediate player though, you should work on those thirds. There's no trick to them really. Sometimes you have to play around with the fingering a little bit, but if you follow my fingering, at the end of the first set of thirds, very end, I would slide 2 down to the first fret on the G sharp, just to get that final transition. Like some of them you can't finger smoothly, there's just no way of doing it. You have to just hop fingers over. But when you finally reach your destination, it's nice to just like slide into it smoothly. So just go into a negative position there for one moment with 2 and 3. And then for the other set of thirds, in a way, they're actually pretty easy. Bar 26 requires very little like jumping around in the left hand. It's just the first hop over to the first finger that's tricky. Some students find this 4-3 group a little bit tricky to do. You can see I'm going from here and then using 3 and 4 on those frets. If you're having trouble with that, chances are your hand is positioned too far over like this. You need to get this knuckle just popped over and have your knuckles and fingers in line with the strings, so that when you need to use 3 and 4, they can just come down on the fretboard like this. If they're over like this, you'll have to reach out and it'll feel like a stretch. But if your hand is swung around, you should be able to play the A and the C, followed by the B and the D. Nice and legato and with general ease with those free fingers. So they just pop in. So it might take you a little bit of work, but it's well worth it. In terms of right hand fingering, not much to talk about in this regard. All the notes with down stems, for the most part, use your thumb. So like all the bass notes. The only part that might break off is at the end of that first two lines there, where I go I, P, P. So I played the upper E in bar 8 there with the I finger. Just to kind of get that group of eighth notes a little bit smoother. So, and then for the upper notes, just make sure you're alternating fingers at all times. So I start off with M, A, M, I, M, A, M, something like that. So just never repeating any fingers. M, A, M, I. So you can throw in the A finger when you have a note that's really far away from the bass. But generally just alternate your fingers. At bar 9 there, you just have to make sure you're playing most of the melody notes with M and A, and then the inner accompaniment voices mostly with the I finger. You should still alternate though. So most of the upper melody notes with M and A, and then the inner notes with I, and then you throw in the M to make sure you don't repeat fingers. Other parts, let's see, at bar somewhere around 15 you have this little diminished 7. It's a pretty easy shift though. You can use the 4th finger as a guide and then just do a little bit of a pull off. Not too tricky there, but it'll take you a little bit of getting used to. Because it's a little bit cramped and it's a big shift, but generally nothing too awkward. Just make sure you practice that a little bit extra. Besides that, there's not too much else to say about the piece. It's just like a nice little piece around the grade, 3 or 4 level. With has a little bit of length to it. It's a little bit exciting. It's very Spanish sounding, so it's a fun little piece for intermediate players. So I hope you enjoy it.